Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So, first up today for T&D, we have my lovely chicken mug that I've had for a very long time. I think it's like 10-ish, like 9-ish years at this point. I'm a big fan of it. It was my go-to for a very long time before I got a bunch of my other mugs, obviously. And so, I'm a big fan. And I really thought that I had a box of it sitting in here somewhere, but apparently I don't, because apparently I decided to actually clean up after myself for once and take all of the teas that I bring in here and leave on this desk to show you guys out of here. But inside of it is Tension Tamer. We have like multiple open boxes in this house. It is a Celestial Seasonings tea if you are not familiar with it. It's very good. But I am kind of surprised that I didn't, actually just look at that before I hit record on this. But here we are. You don't come to me for good decisions. You come to me for D&D, which let's get into talking about what we are talking about today. Today we have a third-party content, or a third-party supplement. It is Third Party Thursday, one of my favorite types of content to do because I do love getting to talk about these third-party content books. And today we are talking about one that is oddly, apparently, not the most well-received one that I have ever got, or that I have found. But I really like it. We're talking about Deep Magic today from ye old Kobold Press. Kobold Press obviously does a lot of really great stuff. They are just about as close to official material as you can get without actually being Wizards of the Coast. But Deep Magic is a book that they put out a few years ago now, so it's not a particularly new book. But a lot of people were disappointed in the way, in the content that was in it, which I don't really understand because I think it's got some really, really great stuff in it. I've had this one sitting on my shelf for a very long time, and I've been kind of putting off talking about it because it is a hefty book. It has, let's read the back here. It has over 700 new spells in it. It has 19 divine domains, so cleric subclasses, 13 wizard subclasses, 6 sorcerer's origins, 3 otherworldly patrons for warlocks, expanded treatments of familiars and other wizardly servants, and much more. Which is honestly kind of a reductionist take on exactly what is in here, because there's a lot of actually really cool stuff that is in this book. But let's get into taking a look at a little bit of it right now. So, first up, the art on this thing is gorgeous. All of Kobold Press's art is gorgeous. It always has been. I would be shocked if they ever moved away from that. But let's talk about what is in here a little bit more. My biggest gripe with this book, I will say, is that the layout of it doesn't make any sense at all. It makes absolutely zero sense. I could not tell you what they were thinking when they laid this thing out, but that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So to kick things off, I'm going to run through the table of contents here really quick, and then we'll go flip through and highlight a couple of little things. To kick things off, you have spells galore. You have like 100 pages of spells to start out, just outright. Which is really cool, and it makes sense for a book that is centered, around spells to have 100 pages of spells. And then from there, you get into all of your different subclasses. And when I say all, I don't mean all, I mean most. And we'll talk about why in just a second, and it's where I actually have a problem with the layout of this book. So, in addition to the things that I listed off of the back with the cleric domains, etc., you have your bard colleges. There are a pair of those. There are 4 different druid circles. There is a martial archetype, actually. 2 sacred oaths for paladins. 2 ranger subclasses. That's the word I'm looking for there. In addition to all of the things that we talked about, all of the cleric subclasses, all of the patrons, all of the sorceress origins, etc. But, and again, this is where I draw issue with the way that they lay this out. They have 2 arcane traditions, 2 wizard subclasses, floating out here on their own, and that's it. There's only 2 of them in here, in spite of the fact that the back of the book advertises 13. Well, you might be asking, where are those other 11 subclasses? Well, I'll tell you. They are scattered throughout the rest of this book. Because the way that this is laid out is it's got a huge chunk of spell descriptions at the beginning. Then it has a bunch of different class options. And then it gets into different schools of magic. And those schools of magic have different subclasses, items, and spell lists associated with them. Why you would lay it out like that, I couldn't tell you. But that is the way that they decided to lay it out. And so, there's several of these. There are 12 different new schools of magic in this, which is cool. It's really cool. They have alchemancy magic, angelic magic, chaos magic, dragon magic, elven ritual magic, hieroglyph magic, illumination magic, ring magic, rune magic, shadow magic, temporal magic, winter magic. They are all really cool. They have a lot of really cool flavor that go with them. But I don't really know why they have it divided out like that. But they do. Cool enough, right? And each of those, not each of them, most of those have subclasses associated with them, either wizard, sorcerer, etc., all the way kind of through the whole run of different things, which are cool and well done. And then there's the section on the wizard's entourage, quote unquote, which is where you get your, like, apprentices, your constructs, your familiars, your stuff like that, which are, again, very cool. I do like them a lot. We will actually stop in that section and take a look at something. But then you have over 50 pages of appendices for some reason. And in the appendices, there are more types of magic instead of just being earlier in the book. I don't know why they decided to put them in the appendix instead. You've got clockwork magic, labyrinth magic, and dark magic. And the dark magic is then broken down further into apocalypse magic, blood magic, fiendish magic, void magic, and mythos magic. Like, when I tell you that the construction of the book doesn't make any sense in my brain, I mean absolutely no sense at all. However, the content of the book is also, in my opinion, very good and very fun. I am somebody who really likes to have extra options for, like, spells, for subclasses. Obviously subclasses, I love subclasses. But spells, magic items, that kind of thing, I love having books that focus on those things. And so the fact that this book focuses so much on that is really cool to me. I have a couple of other spell books that I'll talk about on here at some point as well. But this is the heftiest one by quite a bit. But the layout just doesn't make sense at all. So it is kind of a slog to try and sort through and get through if your brain works like mine does, where this doesn't make any sense to you. But let's go ahead and let's take a little jaunt. We're gonna jump straight to the familiars, because I do think that that is one of my favorite sections. I love familiar stuff for some reason. I can't really explain why, because I have never played a character that had a familiar, but I really do like it. So I cannot for the life of me tell you why that is, but I really do. Unfortunately, sorry, I almost dropped the book off the edge of the desk here. Got a lot going on in front of me. Unfortunately, there is not any art in this section, but you don't necessarily need art for some of these things. Like, I don't know, the platypus or the parrot, which are listed as familiar options in here. They have stats and everything. You can do stuff with them. But for something like a catfish shark or a shocker lizard or something like that, things that, aren't necessarily the most rooted in reality always, it might be a little helpful to have a little bit of art. But I think that my favorite out of all of this, I know I said platypus and you might be thinking, oh, well, that's got to be the favorite. No, you can have a hedgehog familiar in this, which I think is hilarious and adorable and amazing, because there is almost no situation in which an optimized player would go for a hedgehog to be their familiar, unless you're playing, like, spiky baseball with them and you're throwing them into people. But then they're just stuck there and they have, oh, what's that? 1 hit point? But I love a good hedgehog and that kind of thing in there. And then there is a section for variant familiars as well. So in addition to These like kind of normal ones. There is a turtle one in here too. I love turtles, but the hedgehog is going to beat it out for me. There is a section for variant ones in here, which again would be great to have a little bit of art on, so that I knew what the abyssal worm looked like, or what the infernal viper looked like in their minds. But honestly, that's fine. That's not really that's I don't need to worry about that. That is another one of the things about this book, I guess, as I'm sort of talking this through here and I'm thinking about it and flipping through it and realizing again, because it's so dense and it's so spell forward, there is not nearly as much art as there is in a lot of Kobold Press's other books. And so there are a lot of pages of just dense text like this. If you're watching the video, you can see it. If not, I promise you it is very dense text. And it's one of those things where it's like, I wish there was a little bit to break it up in here. Just a little bit. Just a smidge. But let's talk about a couple of the spells that are in here. I have flipped to, by accident, I suppose, one of the ones that I was actually going to, just because I want to highlight a couple of them that I think are fun. I think they're fun. And so, first up, in actually the appendix already, I'll go back and do the other ones too. But the appendix here, I am in Apocalypse Magic right now. There is a Necromancy spell that is 5th level called Detonate Corpses, which is fun. It has a range of 90 feet, a cast time of 1 action, and is an instant duration. The effect: you can cause up to 5 small or medium corpses that you can see within range to explode in a hail of bone shards. Each creature within 20 feet of a detonated corpse takes 4d10 piercing damage or half as much damage with a successful dexterity saving throw. When you cast a spell using a spell slot of 6th level or higher, the damage increases by 1d10 for each spell slot above level 5. So, that's just fun. You know, like, it's one of those things that I enjoy it. I think that it adds a weird, like, little bit to it that I think can be a lot of fun to play with. It can be a lot of fun to mess around with that kind of thing. And so I am a big fan of the way that they have that set up. A lot of these spells are very creative in that sense, and they will dive into the hyper-specific like that, where it's like, oh, 5 small or medium corpses that you can see within 90 feet of you will explode. But when you get into that situation and you have that spell in your back pocket, you're like, oh, I got you, hang on. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's cool. But it's cool for the super specific situation. To get to a slightly more general spell, we're going to flip back to the more your normal schools of magic, your like main spell list that they've got going here. We're going to go ahead and we are going to talk about Revive Beast, which I think is cool. It falls into the resurrection bits, but it's not quite, because it's a beast instead of a person. So as you would expect, casting time is an action, range is touch, and you actually need emeralds worth 100 gold that the spell consumes, as opposed to like diamonds, which is what most of the other ones are. So that's an interesting thing as well. It is a 2nd level spell. I can't remember if I said that already. But you touch a beast that has died within the last minute. That beast returns to life with 1 hit point. This spell can't return a beast to life that has died of old age, nor can it restore any missing body parts. So, for a level 4 adventuring party who has somebody in their party that has this spell, and say their horse got killed in combat or something like that, and suddenly they're down a whole horse out in the middle of nowhere, and they just happen to have like an emerald on them or something like that, you can use this spell. So often those kind of things become super like dispensable and not necessarily something that people really care about keeping track of. But in a like grittier type of game, I guess, you might not have resurrection magic, but like this would be a great spell for that type of setting where it's like, oh, you have to keep your horses alive, like you have to feed them, you have to do all that. Also, if you're a ranger with a companion animal and they go down early and you're not using the like spirit thing that Tasha's introduced, this is for you. This spell right here is for you, so that you can make sure your animal buddy doesn't go down and die. because you don't want that to happen. At a certain point, that becomes a little bit less of a concern, but like that's not what you want to happen, right? So flipping back even further, for some reason I'm going backwards alphabetically for this. Another one of my favorite ones in this is called Fault Line. It is a 6th level evocation spell. Casting time 1 action. Range is self in a 60-foot line. And the duration, which is what actually makes it stand out to me, is permanent. It is a permanent spell. Like not even can be dispelled, just permanent. The ground thrusts sharply upward along a 5-foot wide, 60-foot long line that you designate. All spaces affected by the spell become difficult terrain. In addition, all creatures in the area are knocked prone and take 4d6 or 8d6. There we go. Bludgeoning damage. I don't know where I got 4 from. Creatures that make a successful dexterity saving throw take half as much damage and are not knocked prone. The spell doesn't damage permanent structures, so you can cause a rift in the ground, but it won't knock down a building necessarily. That's what Earthquake is for. That's a whole other thing. But like, the fact that there is damage and knocking prone on the table is what makes it a 6th level spell, as opposed to all of the other 8d6 spells like Lightning Bolt and Fireball and all that, that are, you know, back in the 3rd level range. But the knocking prone and the fact that you can affect things, everything, not things, affect everything in a line in front of you like that, that's real good. And then we're going to do one more, I think. I have to decide which one of these I want to do. So give me just a moment here while I flip back here. I'm trying to decide if I want to do a high level or a low level one. This is where I wish that this kind of, this show was a live kind of thing so that I could just ask what people wanted to hear about. But it's not. So here we are instead. We're going to go with low. We're going to go with Necromancy Cantrip. Necromancy Cantrip. Because I did 1 low level, I did 2 higher levels, so we're going to go with a low level here. Sue me, I don't know. Don't sue me. Please don't sue me. I'm not doing anything wrong. So there is a Necromancy Cantrip in this book called Clumsiness. It has a casting time of 1 action, a range of 30 feet, and it lasts for a minute. You temporarily make a creature within range less dexterous. If the target makes a successful Constitution saving throw, the spell is ineffective. On a failed save, the next time the creature makes a dexterity check before the spell ends, roll a d6 and subtract that result from the roll. The spell then ends. It's like a mini Bane for a dexterity check specifically, but more potent, but also not. It doesn't require concentration, which is cool. So you can just sort of like pop it off on a bunch of people over the course of a minute. I don't know. If you have it. In my mind, this is most effective for if there is somebody you don't like trying to walk across a tightrope or something, or a buddy of yours has a more slippery type of enemy grappled. This is what you want to be throwing at them, because they will be making acrobatics checks to try and get across that or get out of that, and that's what you end up with. So anyway, that's a little taste of what Deep Magic has to offer. I didn't want to go over any of the subclasses because there's so many of them. It would have been really hard to pick like one of them to go over, because subclasses take so much longer than spells to read out. And I know that I spent quite a bit of time complaining about the way that this book is laid out at the beginning, so I already kind of ate a bunch of time doing that. Whoops. But that's fine. So moving on from this, we are going to talk about what shows we have coming out today. It is Thursday, which means that obviously we have Critical Role coming out. In addition to that, we have Authors and Dragons, NADPOD, and LGBT D&D. Go check out any of those shows. Please let them know that I sent you. I don't know that it will do anything, but I really would appreciate it, because why not spread the word a little bit? So yeah. Anyway, all of that said, thank you guys so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming one of my patrons, there's a link to my Patreon in the description of this episode. That is everything I have to say on that. So, without further ado, do not forget, everybody, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.